Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. As promised, I'm going to have a go at the Oncidium Alliance plants today. Now, this might end up going to a part 1 and a part 2 jobby, but I won't know until all the clips are on the computer and I can see what sort of timescales we've got. I'll probably do them in groups because to pick on each plant individually I just know will take far too long. So I'll group them together in little clusters and have a chat about each one, how it's sort of doing or how it's done this year, and what I'm looking forward to from the plants as a future. Some of them may not have one of those, but we'll see how we go. Okay, this is the first little group to have a look at. These are the Twinkles, and Big Mummy Twinkle sat up there. That's effectively Oncidium sotoanum, which is the parent of the Twinkles. So this is the actual species that sits behind them in the main. First one is Tiny Twinkle. So this is a miniature version of the Twinkles. It's the only one of these that I've got mounted. And it seems to like its mount. It's headed off in several directions, and new growths at the moment are producing spikes. There's quite a lot. This Tiny Twinkle sometimes blooms on both sides of the pseudobulb, but more frequently just on one side for me anyway. But the number of spikes basically equals the number of new growths fundamentally. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are difficult to count, 6, 7 or 8 spikes coming. They are relatively young at the moment. I mean, the one that's most advanced is there. That one's starting to branch at the moment. And the fact that they're coming in various stages, that's going to be a nice staggered blooming. So it will be in bloom over a long period simply because the spikes are staged. Some are more advanced than others and some are only just starting. So blooms to come on that one. They are slow to grow their spikes, the Twinkles, but in my opinion well worth waiting for. So that's the only mounted one. This is the yellow Twinkle. This one had to be divided and split up because it was escaping out of the pot. Also, there was quite a large percentage of old bulbs on it, so I wanted to sort of put more energy into the new growth. So I did actually split this and take parts of the older plant off that were leafless and just taking energy out of the new growths basically. If the older plant of your Oncidium exceeds the newer part, sometimes you are wasting energy trying to support the older part of the plant. That works both ways because the older part of the plant can support the newer parts of the plant as well. But on a strong and vigorous grower, the older part of the plant's probably just going to drain the plant. So there comes a time when it's just out of balance, and this one was. This actually got a first in its class earlier this year. It won't be doing that again for a while, but the new growths it's put up since it was repotted are all spiking now. We've got 1, 2, 3 and another large one up the back. We've got 4 spikes on that to come, and that's the yellow one. This one up the back is the cinnamon one, and this one was repotted a while ago now, and probably in the spring it'll get repotted again. It's beginning to fill its pot. The new growths haven't quite gone over the edge of the pot yet, but they're heading towards it. The next set of new growths would be too much for that pot basically. This has got a nice lot of spikes. They're quite well advanced. This will be probably the first one to bloom. Maybe not though. This is the forerunner. As we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spikes I can see on that one. So that's again, it's going to be a good show, but at least 2 or 3 of these spikes may be out at the same time. So it won't be in bloom quite as long as certainly the Tiny Twinkle, but the plant's doing okay, doing well. This is the new acquisition. This is it's effectively a Twinkle crossed back with the parent, Oncidium sotoanum. So it isn't a pure Twinkle. It's actually got a proper name, Tsiku Marguerite, and it's Chian-Tzy Glory. Bought in spike, repotted, which I didn't think was going to be necessary until I just had a quick look inside the pot and found that the whole pot was full of mould. So it had to have a good clean off all the roots and start it again in some new media. It did have a pretty good root system though, despite the mould. So this one should pull on, and repotting it doesn't seem to have stalled the buds in any way. It was a risk on this one, I must admit. But since I got it, the buds have swelled. So there's still life in the spikes. They are going to make it. They're not going to blast. So that one's coming on nicely. And then the big parent I haven't had long also. This, in fact, although it doesn't look like it, this had nearly half the bloom spikes cut off when I repotted it. And they were the spikes that were going over. They still had some blooms on them, but they were going over. The life was starting to go out of them, like this one. Yeah, this one's not long for this world. And before I put this one back now, it's going to have a trim. This spike has blasted completely, but I believe it was like that when I got it. And all the pale pink ones are the older spikes. This is what they look like when they open. They're a lovely deep colour. There's another one round the back here that's not long opened. Another one to come here, providing it doesn't blast. But it's a good sized plant. It didn't have a bad root system. And it was blooming from virtually every growth on the plant. So once this flurry of blooms is over, it's going to be a while before it blooms again, because it's going to have to produce new growths from scratch. There are no new growths on it. These are all matured growths in bloom. There are a couple of old bulbs in there without spikes, but not many. So that was grown very, very well to get it in that state. And I've been after this one for a while because of its fragrance more than anything. Plus it's incredibly floriferous. You've got a job to stop this one blooming, but it will have quite a period without blooms once this lot are over. But they're lasting well, I must admit. The fragrance is stunning. So that's the Twinkles and the parent. Now this group are the Miltonias and Miltonidiums, which are Miltonias crossed with Oncidiums. An assorted bunch here, including some new acquisitions, and got one rescue, or two really, and one species non-bloomer. We'll have a look at that one first. This is Miltonia flavescens, and I have actually had this a while. Now originally it was a rescue plant, it was virtually rootless. Well, it's certainly made up for that, and during this season it's pushed out a lot of new growths which aren't mature yet, like here. But the most mature one is this one, which grew up through the middle of the plant. There's several other new growths, so it now, there's another quite strong new growth around the back there too, this one. So it now has the potential to bloom because it's getting, if you look at this bulb in particular, the bulb itself is starting to swell. It's got good leaves, and it now has a good root system underneath it. But potentially that's the size the bulbs ought to be heading for. That was on it when I got it, although it didn't have any roots underneath it. So it's got some maturing to do, but hopefully one or some of those new growths, when they get to maturity, should actually bloom. That'll be quite interesting because, again, I haven't seen that one bloom yet. So that's that one. This is a rescue. This one got a bacterial rot, and I just about managed to save it. And it really was only just. I only managed to keep one old bulb, but there was a sign of a new growth which has now grown on. It's not full size, but nonetheless it's clean. Yeah, it's got clean leaves, and it has produced some roots in underneath there. It's in far too big a pot. That needs to go in a much smaller pot, but again I'm going to wait. I don't want to disturb it now. It's only just hanging on, so it's a matter of waiting now until I see another new growth with a new root spurt, and then I can get it in. I know it sounds daft, wait till it gets bigger and then put it in a smaller pot, but I've found that an awful lot of the Oncidiums, they just do better crammed in a pot. If you think back to that one we've just seen, you know, the Miltonia flavescens, I mean, that is absolutely full of roots, and it's in a small pot for the size of the plant. So that's in a pot that's too big, and it's not doing it a lot of good, but I daren't disturb it yet. It's only just been rescued, that one. Oh, Melisa Brianne. I'll do pop-ups. It's the easiest way, isn't it? So I'm bound to forget to say what half of them are. I've got 2 mounted Miltonias. This one is Queen Anne, so it's a hybrid. This one's grown on well. It's currently producing its new growth, having bloomed. And a lot of the Oncidium Alliance have that pattern. You won't get your new growths until the blooms are gone and the plant's spent a while without any blooms. It seems to sort of trigger its survival mechanism. I've lost my blooms, I didn't get any seed, right, we need new growths to get some more blooms. So it just seems to be a pattern. They don't all do that, but quite a few do. And yeah, I've got 4 new growths on the previous 2 new growths on the previous 1 new growth. So the progression on that plant is incredible. Well pleased with that one. And the other mounted one over here is coming on behind. Both of these mounted ones were Fusarium infected, treated, and given the fact that the new blooms pushed out with reasonable roots and bloomed, I'd say they are recovered. Now this is Miltonia Castanea, and this is found in the wild as a natural hybrid. So although it is a primary cross, it's actually found in the wild, or has been found in the wild. Again, it's growing on from 1 new growth to 2, and this one's just literally finished blooming, so I'd expect some new growths at the base of those 2 within a month. It's difficult to say because I haven't got notes of such detail as to how long after blooming the new growths come. There's only so many notes you can keep, but it's coming on and it has bloomed. Right, these are the 2 relatively new ones. This one is very new. This was a present given to me by one of the people who came on the coach trip to Ritherington as a thank you. And it's been repotted because I didn't like what it was in. It has got some reasonable roots. It wasn't the best time to repot it because this nice strong new growth that it's pushing up had already done its new roots and they were failing because they were too far away from the media. So it's a little bit of a risk repotting that, but I'm still hoping that some more new roots will come and we'll see. In theory, this latest growth should actually bloom when it matures. But it's got a lot of maturing to do. If you look at the size of that bulb, that's the potential, and that's what we've got at the moment. And that's Miltonia Sunset Glory. We think. It could be somebody messing about with the name, because Miltonia Sunset is a very popular and frequently found Miltonia, and it is a good one. But this one's got the word glory on the end, so somebody may have just added that and not registered it. This was a present from Alberto. When he moved to England to work at Kew Gardens, he had to give up his orchid collection, and many of his good specimen plants were sent to a botanical garden for safekeeping, and some he gave away to some other YouTubers. I mean, Rachel got some, I certainly got a couple, and this one is pushing a new growth and some new roots, so it will recover. It wasn't in a good state when I got it, but I've managed to keep it going, shall we say. So looking forward to that one. And that one is Miltonia Summer Breeze. So we'll see what that one looks like if we ever get some blooms. It'll be a long time. I mean, that growth's got to mature, and as a recovering plant, that growth may not bloom. You may have to wait for the next one. That's the way it goes sometimes. Now, this is Miltonia Sunset, and it's in the doghouse at the moment because I've just decided, as it's nice to see the new growths coming out, I'd take some of the old sheaths off, and I found some flipping scales buried down in there. So you're in the doghouse. But it is time, really. Last time I did the thorough spraying with the systemic pesticide, I literally sprayed the plants, absolutely soaked them, top to bottom, every crevice, every leaf, underside, top side, and I watered the plant with the solution. So all down in the media, all over the roots, I literally soaked the whole lot. And to all intents and purposes, it really did the job. But there'll always be an odd one. If you've got scale, my expression is, if you've ever had scale, you've probably still got them lurking there somewhere. And there are still some lurking, so that needs to be done again. But I'm going to have to wait for a very special day. Because we're now into winter, I haven't got the temperatures, and I might even need to put the heater on with the circulating fans, because what I can't have is soaking wet plants going into a very low temperature night time. So I will have to be careful this time, but it's about time. This time round I don't need to do every single plant, because I know the ones that are suspect. And I know the ones that got sprayed last time that didn't even need spraying because they were clean. But I did them anyway as a precaution in case there were any bugs that decided to move from one plant to another. So that was the idea. This time I'll just do the ones that are prone or known to have a few, like that one now is. Plenty of new growths coming on it. They're coming out in many places. I can't see them all. A lot are in the middle of the plant. And there's one coming up here. Yeah, right in the middle, but it's got quite a few new growths coming. It's getting to the point where it's filled its pot, quite honestly. It's starting to look a bit tired. There is a look about on Oncidium when it's getting tired of being where it is. And if you look at the bunch of growths here, all of which have bloomed, the new growths are going to be out the side of the pot. I may actually take the bull by the horns and have a go at that one and catch these new. You can see as the new growths, this new growth here has got nice clean roots underneath it, as has this one, and it's now pushing out a new growth. It may be a little bit of a risk, but it's probably worth it. And then I can take a few of the, this is a plant of two halves. This back end round here is now serving no purpose on a plant like this, and it's taking up half the pot. We've got leafless bulbs and a couple of bulbs that have literally only got one leaf left that probably won't stay there much longer. And all the front end of the plants around the other side hanging over the side. So this one is supporting a lot of old bulbs. Yeah, this is where I was talking about the balance of a plant. And this is the new part of the plant. This is the one with the better leaves, the better root system, and the new growths. So that's the bit I want to keep, obviously. Yeah, I might actually have a go at that one soon, Miltonia Sunset. And this is a Miltonidium. This is Komp. And this is two plants. And this is coming out of the pot. And that's got scale on it as well. The fact that they're brushing off that easily, they may be already dead. But there's no harm in killing them twice. But this one again, I'm going to stop doing this. When I split a plant, I often put the two growing pieces in the same pot. And for some silly reason, and I can't imagine why, I actually put the growing bits facing the outside of the pot instead of twisting them round and getting them in the middle. So again, it's growing out of its pot, but it's still in bloom at the moment, and it has got some new roots. Despite those blooms, now would be a good time to deal with that, despite it being winter. But it needs a clean up. There's definitely some scale on that one too. Right, so that's the Miltonias and Miltonidiums. Now this last group is a group of oddities, basically. We've got the Nelliila, we looked at that not that long ago. Brianne, Nelliila Red Velvet, and it's decided to spike, but I'm going to take that spike off. I'll do it now. This is not a big enough, strong enough bulb to support a spike as well, and it is producing some roots now. So despite its atrocious damage in the past, I need that to be the strength of the plant. And to do that, it's got to be without the spike, so that's coming off. It's a shame, I love the blooms on that, but it's for the sake of the plant in this case. I have trouble growing these at the best of times without putting them under extra stress. So that's that one. This is a strange one. This is a Banfieldara, and it's Gilded Tower Mystic Maze. And the only good plants of this I have ever seen are the ones for sale. Anybody who's had one a length of time, they just don't seem to grow well. I mean, the potential for this plant is incredible. Look at the size of this bulb. That's its potential, and it's never lived up to it. This bulb was undersized. This bulb was undersized. and it is now producing a new growth. Now this did go downhill once in the past because it got left in a soggy pot and lost most of its roots. It has now got a root system and the new growth is producing some more. So well, that's it. I mean it does tend... Oh, the fan's just come on. It must be getting warm in here. I thought I was getting a bit hot. It does tend to have the darker bulbs as they get older. It's another one of those. But it's not a happy plant, but I'm hoping this is its future, shall we say. Lovely blooms, brassica type blooms, lovely colours from memory, because it was a long time ago. Right, this is, it's got to be classed as a recovering plant because of where it came from. And it's Alisara again, Sunday best, pink skirt. And it came from the lady that I got all the cattleyas from that were infected with Fusarium, many of which are just lost. It has sort of recovered itself, so I think its treatment has worked, but I'm always suspicious of a plant that once had Fusarium, and I always worry, is there still any in there lurking? This has produced a good root system now. It's got several leaved bulbs and a nice strong new growth here, and possibly another one starting down there, maybe. I'm hoping to see some blooms on this growth. The plant's strong enough to take it now. But yeah, recovering, on the verge of recovered. Right, what else have we got over here? Oh, we've got Oncidium Sweet Sugar, one of the best dancing lady types there is. Well, we have some failing roots. I had a suspicion this had Fusarium a long time ago. It was treated, and looking at the latest growth in the new root system, I think it's probably okay now. And the older roots that I'm looking at are from when, you know, from this bulb, which would go back to when it was treated. So I think it's recovering okay. Again, if this decides to try and bloom, I'll stop it. I need to get the strength back in the plant. That's been renamed now. I think it's Oncidessa Sweet Sugar now, whatever an Oncidessa is. And this one has been recently dealt with. It had quite a few old bulbs on it. And not a very good root system, probably in its pot a little bit too long, so it was repotted recently into a small pot. I was actually told off for putting Oncidium types into larger pots. Well, the proof of the pudding, looking at the size of those bulbs and the size of that plant, then look at the size of the pot, and now look at the root growth. I think I'm now convinced. And a nice strong new growth on it, and that is Catatante. When it produces spikes, they're huge. You know, you're looking at 40 or 50 lovely autumn coloured blooms. So it's a smashing plant for blooming, and I'm hoping now to grow that on into a strong plant with multiple leaved bulbs and get some strength back into it and get even bigger, better spikes. But it's bloomed on every new growth so far, so I don't see any reason why this one won't. But again, that's probably going to be next year now. So yeah, that's it with the Oncidiums now. You'll notice the dreaded sprayers out. I decided to take the bull by the horns and mix up some fungicide as I was going round. I thought the plants are all over the grow room at the moment, and even though they weren't due to be watered, in a way that's a good thing, because it meant that I could put a lot of the liquid into the pots on what were quite dry roots, so that will get soaked up straight into the plants. And it's a sunny day today, they've got time to dry off okay. So I thought I'll get on and do that with the plants I've got out. Now I've got some cattleyas to include in that little regime. 2 from the lady in question that are apparently recovered, but you know, I'm erring on the side of caution. Let's get some stuff into them. And I mean, these 2 were infected, definitely. There was no doubt about these, so they can have a go as well, although this one is picking up. So anyway, that's the Oncidium crew. A motley assortment of some really good plants, some lovely strong growers, some that are not doing so well, and some that are doing poorly enough that they might not make it. So it is a mixed bag, and my Oncidiums always have been. That's the way it is. You can only do what you can do. And some plants just don't seem to respond either to your environment or the way you look after them, and don't do as well as others. But for me, as long as they're hanging in there and they have a reasonable chance of growing on, then I give them that chance. There comes a point where I take a look at a plant and I think, you've had your chance, enough's enough, and it just goes under the hedge. And there have been a few this year. I won't say loads, but there have been a few. So we've had a thinning out process. So anyway, I'll get these clips together and see if it makes part 1 and part 2, or whether I can get away with having one big long one. I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.